Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. I told you not to wear that. She laughed. Not the fake kind she used for awkward silences. Not the soft one I used to hear when we watched cat videos in bed. No, this was the real one. The one that cracked through her ribs and bounced off the walls like a champagne cork. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in 6 months. And it wasn't for me. She stood at the end of the hallway in that dress. Maroon. Tight. The one she said she hated because it made her arms look too sharp. But now she wore it with the kind of confidence people usually buy in bottles or borrow for weddings. Her phone lit up on the counter. One word, Greg. I stared at the name like it was a punchline I didn't get. She didn't look at me when she typed back. She didn't flinch when I said her name. She just grabbed her coat and said, "I won't be long. You said you wouldn't go. I changed my mind. But I asked you not to." Another laugh, this one quieter. Meaner. Like she was trying not to roll her eyes. "It's just dinner." No, it wasn't. Dinner is what we used to do when rent was late and groceries were cheap. Dinner was Tuesday ramen and bad wine. Dinner wasn't reservations at some place where they butter your bread for you. Dinner wasn't with Greg. By the time the door clicked shut, I was already packing. Not frantically. Not even angrily. I folded every shirt like a soldier on inspection. I zipped every bag with care. I took my pillow. I took my toothbrush. I left the wedding photo face down on the floor. She didn't know it yet, but that was the last time she'd ever see me standing in that hallway. Because when someone laughs like that, and you know it used to be yours, you don't wait around for the punchline. I didn't slam the door. I wanted to. God, I wanted to leave it swinging off its hinges, shatter the air with something loud and final, but I didn't. I just closed it gently. Like a man who still thought maybe she'd come running after me. Maybe she'd scream my name down the street like in the movies. But all I heard was that echo. That goddamn echo of her laugh. It was still bouncing in my head when I walked down the stairwell of our apartment building, carrying a suitcase I hadn't touched since our honeymoon. The same one she said looked sad. Funny. I guess now it matched me. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. No music. No GPS. Just the sound of the wind and my own stupid thoughts. I passed places we used to go. That gas station with the broken ice cream machine. The bookstore where she pretended to like poetry just to impress me. The old bridge where she once told me I made her feel safe. God, what a joke. By the time I pulled into the cheapest motel on the edge of town, it was almost midnight. I paid cash. Didn't want a paper trail. Not because I was doing something dramatic. No grand plan. No secret revenge. I just didn't want her to know where I was. I didn't want her to even have the option to come looking. Room 12. Peeling wallpaper. A bedspread that smelled like bleach and cigarette ghosts. I dropped my suitcase on the floor and just stood there. Like a glitch. Like someone had unplugged me halfway through a thought. My hands were shaking. My chest felt like it was full of wet cement. And all I could see was her standing in that hallway. In that tight dress. Smiling at her phone like I didn't exist. I know what you're thinking. I sound pathetic. I sound like some fragile man baby who couldn't handle a dinner date. But you don't understand. This wasn't about jealousy. This wasn't even about trust. It was about the pattern. Because that night, the night she laughed and walked out with Greg's coffee in her hand, that wasn't the beginning. Not even close. That was just the first time she stopped pretending to hide it. The missed calls. The way she turned her phone over every time I entered the room. The fake Zoom calls with no laptop in front of her. The lingering perfume that wasn't hers. It had been building like pressure behind drywall. And I just kept patching over the cracks with good intentions and blind love. And now I was here, sitting on a stiff mattress with the AC rattling above me, staring at my phone screen like a coward. I didn't turn it off. I didn't throw it. I just watched it glow in the dark, waiting for a message from her that never came. Not a "where are you?" Not a "come home." Not even a "why." She didn't care that I was gone. And that did something to me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something colder. Something emptier. Like grief, but for someone who wasn't dead, just already done with you. That's when I made the first real decision of the night. If she could pretend I didn't exist, I'd return the favor. But I wouldn't just vanish. No, not yet. I was going to watch what happened next. And I wasn't going to warn her. The motel's ceiling fan clicked like a metronome set to regret. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there with my eyes open, staring at the water stain shaped like a wilted flower, thinking about how fast it all had unraveled. 12 years, dissolved in one laugh. One dress. One door closing. I'd always imagined betrayal would be loud. Screaming matches, broken plates, mascara tears on cheeks. But real betrayal? It's quiet. It's logistical. It's Cora putting on earrings and checking the mirror twice before going out to dinner with my boss. At 6:14 a.m., I stood in the bathroom staring at my own reflection like I was waiting for it to speak. I looked older, weaker. I had this stupid mole under my eye never noticed before, and I kept wondering if she'd ever looked at it and thought it was ugly. I don't know why that mattered, but it did. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I turned my phone back on. No messages. No missed calls. Not even a low effort, "You okay?" It was like I'd never existed. Like a file she'd deleted and forgotten to empty from the trash bin. But what was there, and this is where it starts getting weird, was a notification from our shared home security app. Front door, opened. Back door, opened. Living room, motion detected. At 2:13 a.m., I watched the security footage. It was Greg. He had my keys. He knew the alarm code. I watched him walk in like he belonged there, like it was his house now. And then, 15 seconds later, Cora followed him in. She was laughing. She had no shoes on. Her heels dangled from one hand. Greg placed a hand on the small of her back like he'd done it 100 times before. She didn't flinch. I didn't watch the whole clip. I didn't need to. I already felt like I'd been set on fire from the inside. The betrayal wasn't just real now. It was routine. Practiced. Casual. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a placeholder. A roommate she hadn't bothered to evict yet. I wanted to throw the phone. Smash it. Leave it in the motel sink and let the water take it. But instead, I hit download. I saved the footage. Compressed it. Sent it to an anonymous email I'd created just seconds earlier. Subject line, Phase 1. See, something shifted in me that morning. Something irreversible. I stopped being heartbroken. I stopped asking why. And I started watching. I went out and bought a hoodie, a hat, and a burner phone. I told the front desk I'd be staying another week. Then I started tracking the security system like clockwork. When Greg showed up, when he left, which nights she was alone. I wasn't stalking her. I wasn't planning anything bad. I was collecting. Like a researcher. Like someone preparing a report. Except the thesis was, how to erase someone without leaving a mark. On the 5th night, I watched Greg carry out one of my guitars. He didn't even look guilty. Just laughed at something Cora said, then loaded it into his stupid silver Audi. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, watching my life, my literal strings, drive away. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to let this end with me disappearing. No, she needed to know what it felt like to come home and find the floor missing, to laugh one night and wake up to silence. But like I said, I'm not dramatic. I don't believe in vengeance. I believe in absence. And absence, when used correctly, is louder than any revenge. It took her 3 days to notice the books were gone. Not all of them, just the ones that mattered. The first editions I hunted down for years. The copy of Franny and Zoe she used to steal from my nightstand, claiming she liked the smell of the paper. I knew she never actually finished it. The spine was too perfect, but that wasn't the point. The point was, I watched Greg sit on our couch and rest a beer bottle on that exact nightstand without a coaster. She didn't stop him, so I stopped pretending. I waited until Friday, her yoga night. She'd always leave around 6:30, sometimes earlier if she wanted to grab a smoothie with her friends. I knew the timing by heart. It used to annoy me, the way she'd take 30 minutes choosing which mat to bring when she only ever used one. Now it made my plan easier. I had the old spare key, the one she never asked for back after we changed the locks last year. I let myself in like a shadow and moved like muscle memory. Precise, silent, invisible. I didn't take anything she'd scream about. No laptop. No jewelry. Just pieces of me. My old camera lenses. The green mug with the chip on the handle. The photo of my parents from their wedding that she always said made the shelf look too crowded. She wouldn't even notice, not right away. And that was the idea. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming. The house smelled like basil and wine when I stepped inside. She'd lit one of those candles she only used when company came over. Probably expected Greg. Maybe she was planning another night of pretending she was still someone worth chasing. She'd cleaned, wiped the counters, fluffed the pillows, dimmed the lights. But the moment I stepped into our bedroom, I realized something she hadn't cleaned. The drawer on my side of the bed still had my things in it. Old receipts, a spare inhaler, A list she wrote me once on a napkin that said, in her handwriting, "Don't forget, I love you, and take the trash out." I held it in my hand for a long time. Like it might evaporate. Like it might start bleeding if I looked at it too hard. Then I folded it back up and placed it in my jacket pocket. That was the moment I stopped feeling guilty. This wasn't her house. It was a mausoleum. Every room a tomb. She wasn't mourning me because she didn't believe I was gone. She thought I was sulking, waiting, wounded. She was wrong. I started leaving little gaps. Empty spaces. The kind you can't prove but feel. The missing book. The crooked photo. The light bulb that flickered now because the lamp had been nudged a little to the left. I watched the cameras afterward. Her frown, her hesitation. The way she paused in the hallway like she couldn't remember what she forgot. She thought she was slipping. Good. On Sunday, she poured herself a glass of wine and stared at her phone for a full minute before putting it down. I could see the discomfort in her jaw, the twitch in her hand. That tension you feel when your brain knows something's wrong, but your pride won't let you ask out loud. And still, she didn't call me. Not once. The next morning, she changed the locks. I smiled, because she thought that would stop me. But she didn't know about the second security feed I installed when we remodeled the attic. She never cared about the attic. Said it was my project. Never bothered to check what I wired up there. That camera, hidden behind an old vent, still gave me a full view of the upstairs hallway, including the bedroom. And on Tuesday, when Greg opened my side of the closet to hang his jacket and laughed at my color-coded shirts, I didn't flinch. Because I was done being laughed at. I wasn't going to ruin their lives. I was going to erase myself so perfectly, they'd ruin their own. And they'd never know I was watching. By the end of the second week, she had started talking out loud. Not on calls, not to Greg, just to the air. The kind of muttering people do when they're alone too long with thoughts that don't cooperate. I saw her through the attic cam late one night, walking through the upstairs hallway barefoot, whispering to herself like the silence was closing in. That made me pause. Not out of sympathy, not anymore. But because it meant the cracks were finally showing. I'd been patient, controlled. Every action I took was surgically small. I was the surgeon, and she was the body that didn't know it was open on the table. I didn't break things. I didn't destroy. I adjusted. The toothpaste cap was off one morning, even though I knew she was religious about keeping it closed. She stared at it for a full minute before recapping it with a tremble in her fingers. One night, I left the bathroom mirror just a fraction ajar, just enough that she could see the corner of the shelf behind her. She caught it while brushing her hair and immediately swung the mirror open, like she thought someone was behind her. That's the thing about guilt. It doesn't need evidence. It just needs oxygen. She started double-checking her locks. Started unplugging the toaster before leaving the house. I knew, because she used to mock her mother for doing the same things. Now she stood at the door jiggling the handle 6 times before stepping away. Meanwhile, Greg kept showing up like this was his new castle. He walked through my space in his smug loafers and overconfident smirk, grabbing beers from my fridge and sitting in my reading chair like he owned oxygen. Once, he even opened the drawer next to the bed and found the napkin with the list on it, the one that said, "I love you, and take the trash out." I watched him read it and laugh. A dry, hollow chuckle like it was some joke she'd forgotten to throw away. She didn't laugh. She took it from him and stuffed it in her coat pocket, saying nothing. That was the first moment I saw something off. Not sadness, not guilt. It was fear. Like she suddenly remembered I wasn't the kind of man who breaks things when he's angry. I'm the kind who disappears. But I hadn't disappeared. I'd become the architecture. I slipped into their lives like mold in the walls. Unseen, unwanted, but spreading. I started sending Greg anonymous messages from untraceable email accounts. Nothing threatening. Just lines like, "How well do you know her? She lies better than you think. You should really change the camera codes." He ignored the first 2. But the third? That one hit something. He confronted her the next night. I saw them on the couch, frozen in a silent standoff. She was holding her wine glass like a weapon. He was pacing, hands on hips. I couldn't hear them, but body language doesn't lie. She was denying. He was doubting. And for once, Greg, golden boy, Alpha Greg, looked like a child lost in a mall. Then she said something, one sentence, and he turned around and left. No kiss, no goodbye, just the sound of the front door slamming. She didn't move for 32 minutes. Just sat there, alone, with her hands in her lap, staring at the carpet like it might open up and swallow her. And I watched, not because I enjoyed it, but because it confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't in control anymore. Not of the house, not of her mind, not of the story. I was rewriting everything from the shadows, without touching a thing. She could have told the truth. She could have called me, confessed, said she made a mistake. But she didn't. She played the game, and now the rules were changing. And this time, I was the one dealing the cards. The day she locked the bathroom door while she was showering, that's when I knew she was breaking. Cora never locked doors. Not at home, not with me, not even when we had guests. She used to say locking doors made a home feel like a prison. But that morning, the lock clicked just before the water turned on, and she double-checked it twice. I saw it from the attic feed, the soft shimmer of her shadow pacing behind the frosted glass, flinching at every creak of the floorboards. She thought someone might be inside. Good. I hadn't stepped foot in that house for over a week. I didn't need to. By then, the house was doing the work for me. I'd left just enough of myself behind to make it feel haunted, not by rage, not by violence, but by presence. And that's worse, isn't it? The idea that someone might still be near, and not angry, just watching. I hadn't spoken to anyone about what I was doing. No friends, no therapist, no journal entries. I barely spoke at all these days. Most of my days were spent in the motel room, laptop glowing, earbuds in, tracking every small movement inside that house like a scientist watching bacteria learn how to eat itself alive. Greg didn't come back for 4 days. When he finally did, his face looked different, harder, like someone had whispered something to him in a dream he couldn't shake. I watched as he hugged Cora with one arm, a lazy, reluctant gesture, and then immediately checked the front camera, then the back, then asked her for the password again. She lied. He knew. You could tell by the way his jaw locked up. They argued. Not a screaming match. That would have been easy. No, this was worse. Quiet, sharp words, exchanged like knives across a table. You couldn't hear them, but you could feel them. Her eyes darted around like she was looking for something to blame. He stared at her like she was a puzzle with a piece missing. And for the first time, I saw fear on his face. After he left that night, she changed the bedsheets. Not because they were dirty, she'd already done that 2 days ago, but because she was unraveling. I recognized it. It's what I used to do when I couldn't sleep after our fights, rearranging books, scrubbing the bathroom sink, refolding laundry that didn't need folding. That's not cleaning. That's trying to reclaim space, trying to feel in control of something, anything. She didn't know that control wasn't something you fight for. It's something you lose slowly and realize too late. That night, I made my next move. I used the burner phone, one she didn't have blocked, and sent her a message from a number she didn't recognize. Does Greg know about Denver? That's all it said. No name, no context, just a city we'd visited once, a quiet, snowy getaway where she'd admitted something to me that she thought I'd taken to the grave. Something she wouldn't want repeated. Nothing criminal, nothing outrageous, just deeply personal. A vulnerable confession. One of the few truly real things she'd ever shared with me. And now I'd weaponized it. She read the message within seconds. For almost a full minute, she just stood there in the hallway, holding her phone in both hands like it had turned to stone. Her breathing changed. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she typed something, paused, deleted it. Typed again, deleted. She sat on the stairs, curled up like she was trying to shrink. And then she cried. Not the performative crying she did in front of Greg when she wanted to win an argument. Not the soft, manipulative sniffles she used to use on me during our first year of marriage. This was different. Silent, shoulders trembling, face buried in her sleeve. The kind of crying you only do when you know no one's coming to find you. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I just felt confirmation. I wasn't the ghost anymore. I was the guilt. The thing she couldn't scrub out with bleach or block with passwords. I was inside her now. Every time she turned a light on, every time she hesitated before opening a door, every time she checked her phone and winced. She wanted to believe I was gone. But the thing about disappearing is, if you do it just right, you don't vanish. You linger. She started leaving the lights on. Not just in the hallway, but in every room, kitchen, laundry, even the garage. She never used to do that. Cora was the kind of person who would scold me for leaving a 40-watt bulb burning in the bathroom. Now she moved through the house like a child afraid of the dark, checking behind curtains that never moved, triple locking doors that never creaked. The house. Our house was turning against her, not because it was haunted, but because it remembered me. Every object, every wall, every silence still carried the imprint of who I was. And no matter how many times she changed the locks or lit her overpriced candles, the memory of me still lived there. Quiet, patient. She thought I was tormenting her. But the truth is, I hadn't touched anything in days. The last message I sent was the one about Denver. Since then, radio silence. And that silence? It screamed louder than anything else I could have said. She couldn't trace it, couldn't confront it, couldn't even fully admit it. She tried pretending everything was normal. She started inviting friends over more often, girls from her book club, old coworkers, even her sister. They'd drink wine, gossip too loudly, and laugh in that way people do when they're trying too hard not to talk about what's really going on. But I watched her eyes during those nights. They darted around, checked shadows. She'd freeze for a second if the ice machine kicked in or if someone dropped a fork. Once, she even snapped at her best friend for moving a vase 2 inches to the left. The others laughed. She didn't. She was unraveling, not from what I was doing, but from what she couldn't prove. Then came the voicemail. It arrived late on a Tuesday. I almost didn't check it. I thought it was just another spam call. But something in me, that same part that used to remember every weird habit she had, made me press play. Her voice was shaking. Emery, if you're out there, I just need to know if you're okay. Please. I'm not asking you to come back. I know I messed everything up. I know you saw Greg. I know. I'm not proud of anything, but I need to understand what this is. What's happening? I keep hearing things. I don't know. I feel like I'm being watched. And maybe I deserve that. But if you're doing this, just say something. Please. I'll leave. I'll sell the house. I'll go. Just, please say something. She didn't cry. Not like before. This wasn't guilt anymore. This was fear. Real fear. The kind that doesn't come with tears. The kind that sits in your throat like a stone. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe until that moment. She was no longer the powerful one. Not socially. Not emotionally. Not mentally. The Cora who used to laugh behind my back, who walked out in that tight dress without looking over her shoulder, she was gone. Replaced by someone fragile. Suspicious. Paranoid. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken anymore. But that's the thing about control. Once you taste it again, it's easy to get greedy. So I broke my rule. I went back. Not into the house. I wasn't that careless. I didn't need to step inside to make a mess. I just waited until she left one morning. Purse over her shoulder, car keys jingling like always, and then I walked the perimeter. I left a single cigarette on the back porch railing. I don't smoke. Never have. But she doesn't know that. All she knows is that Greg doesn't either. And that little white cylinder, perfectly untouched, sitting there like a forgotten guest, it would do more damage than any broken window ever could. Then I left. Back to the motel. Back to the silence. That night, the cameras showed her pacing the kitchen in circles, holding the cigarette like it was a loaded gun. She kept asking no one. Why? Why now? She opened every window, checked every door. She even looked in the attic hatch, the one with the hidden camera, and just stared at it for a full 10 seconds, like she could feel me watching. She went to bed that night with the lights on and a knife under her pillow. I watched until the feed went dark. She had unplugged the Wi-Fi. She thought that would end it. But she didn't understand yet. The haunting wasn't in the house. It was in her now. The motel room looked different in the daylight. Not better. Just less haunted. The walls were still yellowed. The curtains still smelled like old coffee and cheaper cigarettes. But I saw them now. I really saw them. Not through the lens of someone hiding or watching or waiting. Just through my own eyes. My own life. I had unplugged the feed that morning. Not because she unplugged the Wi-Fi. Not because the attic camera lost signal. I shut it off myself. I deleted the login. Burned the password. Logged out. For good. I'd watched her spiral long enough. It wasn't satisfying anymore. It wasn't even necessary. Somewhere in the quiet between the cigarette and the voicemail, I realized she didn't know me paying. She owed me nothing. And I didn't need to haunt her to matter. I didn't need to stay in the shadows just to prove I existed. I had existed. And now I was done. I left a letter with the motel clerk, just in case she ever found her way there. It said, "You don't need to look over your shoulder anymore. I'm not behind you. I'm ahead of you now." No threats. No bitterness. Just truth. I drove west. Didn't know where I was going at first. But that was the point, wasn't it? For the first time in years, my steps weren't wrapped around someone else's orbit. I didn't have to worry whether she'd call, or lie, or cry, or fake a laugh at something Greg said over steak. I could stop replaying old scenes like a director who never finished his film. Somewhere outside of Fairview, I found this little roadside diner. Real basic. Metal stools. Menu with no photos. The kind of place where no one cares who you were yesterday. The waitress's name was Junie. Probably 50, maybe older. She called me Han, without blinking. I ordered pancakes. No phone in my hand. No tracking apps. No camera feeds. Just syrup. And sunlight. And peace. I started writing again. Not letters to her. Not emails I'd never sent. Just writing. Dumb little poems about trees and coffee and motel carpet burns. I even laughed at one of them. Actually laughed. Not a bitter scoff or a wounded exhale. A real, ridiculous laugh. Cora never would have found it funny. And that, somehow, made it even better. I got a cheap rental near the coast. Tiny. Cracked tiles. But it's mine. There's no guest room. No closet full of things that belong to someone who's not coming back. Just me. A small bed. A new mug. And the feeling that, slowly, I am becoming someone worth being again. I never heard from her again. Not after the voicemail. Not after the cigarette. I imagine she thinks I vanished forever. Maybe she tells her friends I ran off, changed my name, started a cult in the desert. Fine. Let her make up whatever ending helps her sleep. Because for once, I'm sleeping just fine. And the dream? It's not about revenge. It's not about her. It's about waking up in the morning, making coffee, and knowing, finally, I am no longer living in a house where my silence was louder than my voice. I didn't need her to hurt. I just needed to remember who I was without her.